Hello again, everyone. It's me, Alex, your nerd to the core, and today I'm going to be your Commander Dad, talking to you about some of my favorite Commander decks, what makes them different, how to get the most play value out of the cards you decide to sleeve up. Today I'm going to be talking about my Lurrus of the Dream Den zombie deck. Now, Lurrus probably doesn't need any introduction. They are one of the most powerful cards printed in Magic ever, and definitely in the past couple of years. They are a one hybrid black white legendary creature cat nightmare. Now they have the companion ability, and we don't need to care about it, but if you do, that says at any time when you can play a sorcery, you can pay 3 mana to take it outside the game and put it into your hand. But that's not what we care about. The companion requirement for Lurrus is each permanent card in your deck has a mana value 2 or less. Now Lurrus is a 3/2 legendary creature cat nightmare with lifelink, and during each of your turns, you may cast one permanent spell with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard. So they're a value engine. They let you recast used pieces of cardboard for effect. But why Lurrus zombies? Well, for a long time I was enamored with Lurrus. There was a Pioneer Lurrus Auras deck that did well when that deck format first broke out, and the idea just grabbed me. But I couldn't quite get it to work in Commander. And then a friend of mine helped me build a Lurrus life gain, drain, pay deck that was really more based on combos. And that wasn't something I really enjoyed doing. The deck was powerful, but it wasn't what I wanted to be doing with Lurrus. Now, if that's the kind of deck that interests you, let me know. Maybe I'll talk about it at another time. But why Lurrus zombies? Well, zombies are one of my favorite creature types in all of Magic. I've had numerous zombie decks over the years, but none of them really stuck around. They all kind of felt the same. You're playing the same cards as every other zombie deck out there. And while, yes, this deck does run a lot of the same cards, I looked to Lurrus to kind of guide my deck construction. You see, I love a restriction. I love something that forces me to look at other potential cards, forcing me to look at other ways to try and get the same effect, but using a different set of cards. Why? I find it fun. I think the idea of bringing something novel and different, something that your pod mates may never have seen, it's fun for me. And by building offbeat decks, I get to bring cards into the fold that some people might never have thought of. And why white zombies? Well, it has to do with some of the cards in this pile. Really, the card that kind of keyed me into this, and there's another one later on, but it's Wayward Servant. It's from Amonkhet. It's white and a black for a creature zombie. It's a 2/2. Whenever another zombie enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Now this is just a zombie aristocrat. It's a card that deals damage, gains life, but it pointed me in a direction. I want to be making a lot of zombies. I want to be low to the ground, and that was what set me on this path. Now, thankfully, Aether Drift gave me a really powerful 2-drop zombie in Zahir's Gory's Past. It has Start Your Engines, which means over the course of turns, if I deal damage to my opponent 3 times after starting my engines, I get a bonus ability. Now, this is 3 and a 2. I can sacrifice another creature, surveil 1, activate only once each turn. Surveil's great. I want to be putting things into my graveyard, and this can put 2 things into my graveyard if I play my cards right. And when I have max speed, whenever a non-token creature I control dies, I create a 2/2 black zombie creature token that's tapped. Want to go wide, want to make zombies, want to put things in my graveyard? Zahir was a great addition to the deck. Now, another reason that I like Lurrus is it gives me access to more mass reanimation effects. What do I mean? Well, here's Raise the Past, a sorcery from Foundation for 2 white. Return all creature cards with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, if I have a graveyard full of tiny zombies that all come into play together, well, that just triggers my Wayward Servant a bunch of times. Helps me end the game. Some of these are cards you might see in a zombie deck, but none of them are used quite this way to really lean into Lurrus's restriction. Now, what does that look like? Well, one thing I have to do is fill the yard. Now, these aren't exactly zombie cards. They are kinda, but really these are different ways to leverage Lurrus's ability of having small things enter the battlefield to get cards into my bin. The first is Snarling Gorehound from Murders at Karlov Manor. For a single black, it's a 1/1 dog with menace, and whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under my control, I surveil 1. You know what kind of cards have power 2 or less? creatures with mana value 2 or less. Embalmer's Tools is one of my favorite engines in this deck. It's an artifact from Amonkhet. It's going to come up a bunch in this list. Activate abilities of creature cards in your graveyard cost 1 less to activate. That isn't a big deal here. What is tap an untapped zombie you control. Target player mills their library for 1. So if I have a lot of zombies, I can use them at the end of my opponent's turn, turn them all sideways to dump a whole bunch of cards in my yard, bring them back with Raise the Past. Now, Gate to the Afterlife is a combination card with Godpharaoh's Gift. Now, I don't run Godpharaoh's Gift in this deck. I could, but I'm not running it to search stuff up, so I'm not going to read that part. I'm going to read the first part. So it's a 3-mana artifact that says, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you gain life. Then you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. This is one of my favorite Aristocrat engines, regardless of whether or not you're running the Godpharaoh's Gift part of this combo. Why? You want to put cards in your graveyard. You want creatures to die, and you want to churn through your library. Gate to the Afterlife is a sleeper hit for Aristocrats decks. Now, what do you do once you have your zombies? Well, this is what happens when you go wide. Noxious Ghoul might look like a Nombo. It's 3 black. This copies from the multiplayer product. I can't remember the name of right now, but it's originally from Scourgeon. It's a zombie, 3/3. When Noxious Ghoul or another zombie enters the battlefield, all non-zombie creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn. Now, Lurrus isn't a zombie, so if you're doing this too much with Lurrus on the battlefield, you're gonna lose your commander. But don't worry about it. There are ways to get Lurrus back. It is a black-white deck after all. But with enough tokens, well, what you're going to do is you're just going to consistently wipe the board every turn. That's what you want to be doing. You want to be keeping the board clear so your zombies can swing in. Another way to keep your board clear is with Binding Mummy. This is another reason I decided to run this deck. Again, from Amonkhet, 1 and a white for a 2/2 creature zombie. Whenever another zombie enters the battlefield under your control, you may tap target artifact or creature. Well, if I'm going to be making a ton of zombies, I might as well tap down blockers. And how do I make a ton of zombies? Okay, this is a reader. Tombstone Stairwell is 2 black for an enchant world or world enchantment from Mirage. World enchantments are these old cards that basically you can only have one of in play at any time on either side of the battlefield. So a new world enchantment would destroy an old world enchantment, but you don't have to worry about that. Cumulative upkeep 1 and a black. And basically what this says is that during each player's upkeep, each player puts into play a Tomb Spawn token for each creature card in their graveyard. These are 2/2 black creatures that have haste and count as zombies. And at the end of turn, or when this leaves play, bury all of these tokens. So every turn, you are going to be making tons of zombies, and tons of zombies are going to be dying. And this is a zombie aristocrats deck. What does that mean? You want zombies to die. And if you're doing a good job, you're going to have more creatures entering play than anyone else. So you get to tap down your opponent's blockers and kind of dictate the pace of combat with Binding Mummy. Now, what do you do with all these tokens? Well, the deck does have a go wide option. And these are 2 ways to end the game without really having to attack. The first is Shepherd of Rot. 1 and a black for a zombie cleric from Onslaught. 1/1, tap. Each player loses 1 life for each zombie in play. Well, with Tombstone Stairwell and Shepherd of Rot, you're going to end the game right quick. I love having cards like this in a deck. Cards that put pressure on the game and say, you know what? We all got to get home. So why don't we push the pedal to the metal and make things move faster? Now, if I'm not feeling like being that aggressive, I have Siege Zombie, also 1 in a black, for a creature zombie 2/2. Tap 3 untapped creatures you control. Each opponent loses 1 life. Now, what's great about these? Lurrus can buy them back. So what we're seeing is kind of a cohesive theme come together where we have a whole bunch of small creatures that work together to be greater than the sum of their parts. And each of them work together in slightly different ways. I make tokens to wipe the board. I make tokens to clear away so I can tap down blockers. I make tokens to turn them sideways to drain you or mill myself to reload with a mass reanimation effect. Now this is just some fun stuff you get to do with Lurrus. The first package are the enchantments. Now, anyone with a Lurrus deck knows about Kaya's Ghost Form. Black for an aura from War of the Spark, enchant creature or planeswalker you control. When enchanted permanent dies or is put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control. So if you put Kaya's Ghost Form on Lurrus, and Lurrus gets killed, well, it comes back. And then you can bring the Ghost Form back. Or bring back something else. Ghost Form is one of those cards that is a must, in my opinion, in just about every Lurrus deck. Yes, I know, I'm big on playing different cards, but Ghost Form's just too good. These two are walls of text, but basically, Dance of the Dead and Animate Dead are both 2-mana enchantments that reanimate creatures from any graveyard. Animate Dead brings it back with a -1/-0, so it's a little bit weaker. Dance of the Dead actually makes it bigger. It gives it +1/+1, but it enters, I believe it enters tapped, and then you have to pay 1 and a black to untap it. So in other words, with these, I can keep bringing creatures back, sacrificing them, and doing all sorts of loops, again, thanks to Lurrus. What am I doing with some of these? Well, might be fogging every turn. Yeah, I know. Fogs aren't fun. But sometimes with Kamiya False Hope, what you want to do, which is 1 for a spirit, 1 white for a Spirit from Betrayers of Kamigawa for a 1/1, you sacrifice it, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. You have to survive, and this is a great way in a Lurrus deck to keep going, especially a black-white Lurrus deck. Or I can just clear the best thing every turn. A Cursed Marauder, 1 and a black from Modern Horizons 3 for a zombie warrior. It's a 2/1. When it enters, each player sacrifices a non-token creature. And then what do you do with all these reanimation effects? Grey Merchant of Asphodel, 2/4 for a zombie from Theros for 3 black. When it enters, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black, number of black pips, and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. This is one of my most consistent ways of ending the game with something like Animate Dead or Dance of the Dead. So what we end up happening is these cards in concert allow me to rebuy Grey Merchant when I sacrifice it to something or someone else. And the end result is ending the game in short order. Now, this happens usually when the game goes long. We're all ready for the next one anyway. Most of the time, though, Lurrus is a bleeder deck. It dings in for damage. You might have heard that from me a bunch. But the real joy is when I get to put new cards into the deck. Lurrus cares about zombies. Lurrus cares about small things. It's real easy to look through an entire card file for zombies or cards that cost 2 or less to try and see if they fit into Lurrus. That, to me, is part of the joy of Commander. It's taking that which might not have a home elsewhere and finding a new use for it. What do you think? How do you build towards a restriction in Commander? I want to hear about it. Do you think Lurrus is the kind of deck that you'd want to build? One that is a little left of center, doesn't do the most powerful thing, but can still win a game? Or are you someone who decides to see Lurrus and decides to go for the full throttle, I'm going to win by any means necessary? I want to hear. So, as always, make sure you're having a good time with the cards you're playing. It is your fun after all, and you want to make sure that you're spending your time wisely. Thanks again. Have a good day.